Is that a crate that was in your room?
Stop.
It is. Oh my gosh. You are freaking obsessed with those crates.
This is how I was like, I don't want to really get rid of it.
You
It kind of
can't.
goes with my vibe still. It just has a different purpose now.
Yeah.
It has my hydrator.
What's a hydrator?
Hydrator. A humidifier?
Whoa, wait, what is that called?
Humidifier.
Yes, that's what I meant. That's what I meant.
No.
That's what I meant.
What?
That's what I meant. Okay, guys, I don't know things sometimes.
A hydrator is an absolute made-up word. You made up that word.
Shush.
And you could have used a real word.
The hydrator is just water. Water's
Okay,
a hydrator.
I was thinking of a purifier or the other one. What's the one you
humidifier.
just
Complete
said?
wrong.
Humidifier.
Complete wrong
I
all the way
cannot
around.
remember that name.
Wait, is that a
Oh, gosh.
diffuser? Does it diffuse like essential oils, or is it to make the air humid?
Meredith, I don't really know, to be honest.
Do you
I just got
drip
it from
oils in
Walmart.
it?
So it's a
I do.
diffuser.
Okay, so it's a diffuser,
Okay, it's a diffuser.
What
So
did,
not
what did
a-
you say?
so
Hydrator.
not a hydrator. Hydrator.
not a hydrator. It is a
Hydrator.
diffuser.
Hey, it's Casey,
I'm Meredith.
And this is Kiera.
and we're 3 best friends in a long-distance relationship.
We've learned some valuable lessons along the way over the last 10 years of being friends.
Now let's get to it because let's get into this guy.
Okay.
It's been forever. Hello.
Hi guys.
I think I sounded like a smoker there.
Hi guys. You sound like Miley Cyrus.
Boys.
Oh, Miley.
2.
Welcome to episode 2.
That's wild. So how have you guys been since the last time we spoke?
Well, it's like we've been doing this for 2 days now.
Wow. My gosh. Well, I'm drinking
I think
wine
we all
over here.
currently have a glass of wine.
Yes. Cheers if you're listening to us.
Cheers.
Episode 2. Get some wine. Buckle in. It's going to be a good episode.
Yeah.
So I think we were going to just kind of dive right into a little bit more of who we are and why we are still friends to this day, and
Mhm.
how we kind of alluded to
Why we are the way we are.
Mennonite and the different denomination of what that is and how that kind of plays into our story today. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit more.
Woo, fun.
Whoa. Mennonite.
So whether or not you wanted it, here is your history lesson for today.
You will be quizzed at the end.
Yes. Take notes.
I'm not giving any dates, and I'm not even going to try. But essentially, the denomination of Mennonite comes from the root of Anabaptism. So
Anabaptist.
essentially what Anabaptism means is that you choose when you want to be baptized rather than being baptized when you're an infant. So off of that, there's a lot of different branches, and we come from the branch of Menno-Simons, which was turned into Mennonites after that. So from there, a lot of people migrated over from Europe and landed in places of Iowa, Pennsylvania, Virginia,
Yeah.
Ohio. Like the list yeah. just goes
All
on
of our
and
places,
on and on.
all of our homes.
So that plays a huge role into why we are still friends to this day. So I'm going to let somebody kick off their hometown, tell us where they're from, how Mennonite plays a role into you, and go for it.
Yeah, Kiki, you go.
Oh boy. Okay. Okay, so I grew up in Virginia in this town called Harrisonburg. If you've ever heard of the James Madison Dukes, that is probably the most notable thing about my hometown. But I think similar to both Casey and Meredith's hometown, my Mennonite community was very small, very close-knit. Casey kind of gave you a little bit of a rundown, but if you're familiar with any kind of denomination of Christianity, it is essentially obviously a denomination of Christianity with just specific things tied to it. And so growing up, I went to a Mennonite church, and I also went to a private Mennonite middle and high school. There was really just one high school, but multiple churches in the area. So a lot of my classmates did not go to church with me, but kind of all came to school together. So if you're ever in Harrisonburg, Virginia, I mean,
but shout out to what's that bagel place?
Oh,
JJ's?
yes.
Mr. J's.
Shout
oh,
out.
That
Mr.
place
J's
is so
bagels.
good. And what's the ice cream
shout
place
out.
there too?
Mm.
Klein's, and then Taste of Thai.
Wow.
There are so
Taste
many
of-
good
this is how
places
you
in
know
Harrisonburg.
these are
yeah.
good friends.
Well, I will say
Oh
it
my
wasn't.
gosh.
Because I don't know these things because of you. My siblings went to school there, so
I kind of forgot that until you just said that. To
I'm
be
not gonna
honest.
lie. I forgot that they went too. So,
Well, why don't you explain the college there as well then?
Yeah, sure. So in Harrisonburg, way different than JMU. JMU is a big state school. Eastern Mennonite University is a small Mennonite university there. So just a lot of the kids that I went to school with ended up going to college there to play sports, to sing in choir. That is a kind of a random fact about the
Huge.
Mennonites, that 4-part harmony in churches is huge. So like Meredith and Casey, we all were in choir growing up. So a lot of my classmates ended up going there. I was kind of one of the well, I don't even know if I would say that. I actually went to school with maybe like a handful of people, but just it was not in my hometown. But yeah, that was just a popular place to go to college there.
my siblings did go there.
Yeah, I would say we all probably know people that have gone there
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
will go there.
Because those are kind
This
of
is true.
roots.
It's a tight knit community. And what I would say about the Mennonites too, we make this running joke of the Mennonite game, but it's
True.
it's kind of just like this non-game game you play of like, do you know this person? And it's like, most likely if you're part of a Mennonite community, you do know them, or someone with the same last name as them
Mhm.
that have probably some relation to them. So just a running joke. I'm like, and there's a handful of last names that I could give you that are classic Mennonite names.
Totally. You probably know a Mennonite and you don't even know it.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
Even like in where I live now, where we went to Northwestern, there's a huge Dutch population, and so like it's the same as like Dutch bingo is what they call it. Like, do you know the Vanderbrooks? And then so and so, or like there's I was listening to a podcast and the lady on there is Jewish, and she was talking about like, oh yeah, Jewish Jenga, or like there's like it's like
so every
there's,
denomination
weird
has their own
parts of
version.
that game. Yeah. But anyways, yeah.
Do you want to talk about PA?
I'd love to. Yeah. So then I grew up in a really small town, Belleville, Pennsylvania.
What is
and
really
it's
small? Maybe we should clarify like
really
what our
small,
smallness
like-
is. Like, Kira, when you said really small, what was your really small?
Do you know population of Harrisonburg? Mm-hmm.
What was my really small?
I mean, there was a college there,
Honestly,
so there was like,
I could throw a number on there and it
yeah.
couldn't be right. I would say around. Okay, this could be way off, so please do not quote me. But maybe 100,000.
I almost agree with you because I remember you told me you lived in a small town, and I remember
That is
disagreeing
not
with you
small.
mightily.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up. Harrisonburg,
we're looking this
is
up.
it small?
Virginia population 50 in 2021 51,000.
Okay, so you're dead wrong.
But I would
Okay, I would
argue
off.
that is
Couldn't
not
be
small.
further off. Yeah,
I would completely argue that's not small. And that's as of 2021.
I mean-
so when we first met you, and when I first met you and when Merritt,
That's insane.
2014. So if we even go back
Belleville,
from there.
Pennsylvania in 2020
so it's probably a little smaller.
1,800 in Belleville. So
Stop.
So I think she
grew
wins
up
for
in
small
a
town.
Small town.
Mhm.
Okay, you do win. To my advantage, I did not realize that there were like way smaller Mennonite towns because my worldview was just
Sure.
so small back then. And then when I met you and went to your small town, I
Oh,
was like,
it's farm.
this
This
is
is
farm.
farm.
More cattle.
Only
Yeah.
farms.
Mhm.
So yeah, I grew up in Belleville. I went also to a Mennonite church, went to a private Mennonite school from like preschool to 12th grade. There were 12 people that graduated with me. There were 12 of us, and 8 of us went to preschool
That's so
there together
wild.
also. So like from preschool to 12th grade, there were 8 of us that were together the whole time.
Insane.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, I mean, very similar to these guys. Like I said, I have 2 older siblings, and they went to EMU, which was in Harrisonburg. And so I knew like that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go there. I wanted to play field hockey. That's what my sister did. I really loved it. But then I don't know. I just had this weird drawing to Kansas. I think also my family really didn't want me to. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm freaking going to then.
Right. You're like, I need to do this.
They were like, go to Penn State, go for like nursing or something. And I was like, I'm going to go to Kansas and go for education where I'm going to make no money.
Yeah.
But I did it. And then so glad I did because that's where we met. So
You did it.
Right.
Yeah.
Wait, can I add something to my story that I kind of forgot?
Yeah, sure. Let's backtrack.
Yep. This podcast is about you. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, whatever you want to say, Kira, go ahead and say it.
It is. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, you guys. But what I will say about my hometown, considering a lot of people went to that college, I kind of felt the same as Meredith in the sense of like, I wanted to go out and do something different. Even though a handful of my classmates ended up going to Heston as well, I still felt like I was like the one paving the way because I had no, like maybe my grandpa did actually. I think now that I think about it, I think maybe he went, but obviously that was like ages ago. So I'm like, I want to go do my own thing and kind of create a life for me that's not in Virginia. And so anyways, went there, met them, obviously best decision I ever made.
Here we are.
Well, just like always, I'm usually different than you guys. I had actually no desire to go to Heston, but we'll get into that in just a second. So I'm from Iowa. I'm from a small town of Kelowna.
Do you know the population of the small town of Kelowna?
It was 2,000 growing up. So just a wee bit bigger than you, Mary. It's probably
just a
more like
bit.
25 or 3,000 today. But I actually different in the sense I went to public school until high school. So you had the high school, the public high school, and then you had a private Mennonite high school that was actually located across the street from my church, my Mennonite church growing up. My school was also relatively small. I had about 100 students when I was going in total with the high school. And I guess it's actually not even called Iowa Mennonite School anymore. It's called Hillcrest Academy. They just did a name change a couple of years ago.
It's wild.
Oh.
It's to help boost students.
Yeah. Because can we also clarify Mennonite, like we all grew up Mennonite, but I feel like when people picture Mennonite, they picture coverings, they picture like horse and buggies.
Yeah, Amish.
Like there are Mennonites that wear coverings, but they will like drive cars. And then there are Mennonites, like it's such a spectrum. And that like we grew up dressing how we dress now.
Yeah,
like,
true.
You know, jeans and whatever. Like we had iPhones. I didn't have an iPhone until college, but you know what I mean.
Like, I hadn't have one until my senior year, but that was
but
that was like parental
technology. It was not because of our religion.
No,
and so it was just like Kiera said earlier. It was just like another like denomination of Christianity.
Yeah,
there are some Mennonites who dress like that.
Yeah,
you know, like there are some Mennonite churches in my hometown that like they only drive white cars or black cars because that's like less worldly than a colored car. You know. Like things like that.
That is so fascinating.
And it's funny, I think, because we even get fascinated within each other and like our states, because I have Amish in Kelowna, Iowa, where I live, and you have Amish in Pennsylvania, and we even have compared our Amish, and they're not even close to the same. So it's funny how every branch is just like a little bit different from state to state, even. But yeah, I went to Iowa Mennonite School at the time. I had about 36 kids in my graduating class, so we were also pretty small, not quite as small as Meredith. And I did actually go to school with, I want to say around 8 of the same kids from elementary all the way through, just because you had to make a decision whether you were going to go to the public high school or you were going to go to the private high school. And so that I remember kind of wrestling with that, just because I would say of us 3, I was probably a little bit more enthralled in the world. I was probably a little less sheltered compared to you guys. I think we can probably say that now. I didn't want to be mean about it, but yeah, you guys were pretty sheltered.
Yeah, just say
I still was sheltered. I know I was still probably sheltered in my own rights, but a little less so than you guys. But I I did not want anything actually to do with Mennonite-ism. I don't know if that's even the right way to say that, but my older sister went to Heston. She played volleyball. I wanted to play volleyball in college, and I was like, Heston, whatever. I can go probably anywhere else but there. Just for context, I am 5'3.5", so I do know my limitations when it comes to the sport of volleyball. I'd like to say I'm pretty decent, but I again, 5'3.5". So I was looking at a ton of other schools. I just had no desire to go to Heston. I am probably going to name drop here a little bit. Rachel Swartz-Juber Miller and Bethany, was it Miller? Bethany Miller and Rachel Swartz-Juber Miller had a huge role to play.
Again, such Mennonite names.
Such Mennonite names. So if you want an example, that's a perfect example right there. They kind of sold me on the idea. And I just remember having this sense of peace. Like, you know what, this is going to be right. Kind of like you, Mare. Like, I just was kind of drawn towards it. And I thought it was like annoying that that was happening, because I am very much like Meredith in the sense where if everyone wants me to do something, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to.
It's a good life skill.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of.
It's served as well.
Yeah. But I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going. And I played volleyball, and it turned out to be the absolute best decision I've ever made in my life. So shout out to the Mennonite denomination, specifically for the fact that it brought us all to Heston, which takes us to 2014.
You know, it's so crazy though. It's so crazy though, because I think right now in my life as a 27-year-old not living in a Mennonite town, I think it's just so, like, I love going back and like thinking about the ways of the Mennonites, because I don't really exercise that muscle as much anymore, because I honestly don't even know if there's a Mennonite church around here. A lot of my like ideologies and beliefs are rooted in the Mennonite faith, even though I wouldn't consider myself a Mennonite anymore. But I really love like just talking about it with you guys, because we all have like that kind of shared faith, even though, like you said, it's all different to a degree because of our different communities, but it still is rooted in the same thing. I just love like going back and like thinking of it. I feel nostalgic in a way. And that is, like you said, what brought us together. So like that's a big part of our story. But wait, quick before we dive into school, Case, do you remember us going to some weekend and doing like a scholarship weekend?
Totally. So it was, I don't know why this is coming back to me, but it was a leadership scholarship weekend. And if you participated, you were able to get $1,000 off of your tuition, which heck yeah, we're going to go. And especially for private education. I mean,
any money was helpful.
Any education is expensive. Let's put that out there. But private education is just another ballgame.
Right.
But that was a huge part. I think I knew I was going at that time. And I remember good old Facebook. I messaged you and I said, hey, I am going to this leadership scholarship weekend. And are you coming? Like that would be so cool if you came. And you actually said, yeah, I am planning on going. So that was like, I think the first time you and I had really spent a significant amount of time together since we had really even first met.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the same. And like, honestly, at that time in my life, I like to think I've morphed a little bit to be more decisive, but I was so indecisive back then. I literally could have like crumbled up a piece of paper and been like, if it goes in the trash can, I'm going to Heston. Like at that point, I was like, I am just truly winging this thing. And so to go to this, weekend at a college, a potential school that maybe I would know one person at, was like so appealing to me. And like, I really think it was in that weekend. And when you were like, I'm definitely coming, kind of nudged me along, because, we knew each other, like we said in our first episode, since 7th grade, but we didn't like have like depth. I wouldn't say like, it was like every couple years we'd be like, oh, hey, I know you.
Right on each other's Facebook wall type of relationship. Right. If you guys remember that.
Right. Do you guys remember the poking? I don't know if that's still a thing. Were you like,
I was a poker.
I'm sure we had poking wars.
And you'd like click rapidly to see how many times you could poke them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. I will say though, I feel like I had a bit of a persuasive element in you coming to Heston.
I would say so.
And eventually I had a little bit of a persuasiveness getting you both to Northwestern, which we'll talk about in a bit. But
oh yeah. It didn't take much.
This is a fun theme in our lives. Like Meredith's like, nah, you could have just said, come with it.
Yeah.
You're on board.
But the funny thing about that weekend is I remember you and I hung out like pretty much the whole time. And we took a big group
Was
photo.
it at Heston?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we took a big group photo of all the people that were in the scholarship weekend. And funny enough, Bryce was also there that weekend and we didn't know. And I looked back at that photo later on because my mom's like, we should see if he was there. And there
It's
he
your
was.
first picture together.
So cute.
It's literally so funny, and we had no
It
clue.
literally is.
Show your kids that someday.
I don't know
That's
where
so
that photo
cute.
is. I probably threw it away.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
God
it's
really
just so
puts
funny. It's
people
like,
intentionally in
living
your
in the Mennonite
surroundings.
community is like, you kind of always go to the same places and you're in the same vicinity of each other, but you just don't know it. So
Yeah.
let's talk about Mennonite conventions.
This is
How
so
about that?
true.
Oh my gosh. Well, my Mennonite conventions were different than you guys' Mennonite conventions because my church was not part of Mennonite Church USA.
I remember that.
Oh, that's right.
So, there, like we said, different kinds of Mennonite churches. My church is part of the Conservative Mennonite Conference. So, if there's a church where there's people with coverings, that's where it would be.
Let's also maybe clarify what conservative Mennonite means in terms of the word conservative, is as we understand it in politics.
Sure.
So conservative means more of conservative in how you interpret the Bible rather than conservative in how you think politically, which definitely has a factor in it. But when I think of a conservative Mennonite, I think of skirts, long skirts.
Yes.
Very plain.
It's interpreting the Bible exactly how it's written. Like the creation was 7 days. Like all of those things. And so that's like what my church, mine was part of the Conservative Mennonite USA. So like I remember I helped lead worship for some of the youth events and I wore shorts and my mom was like, Meredith, you probably shouldn't wear those shorts to it. And I remember being like, F that.
Yeah.
I'm wearing these. Like, I don't care.
No,
like,
Mom.
Again,
I'm
tell me
going
I
to
can't do
heaven.
something and I'm
That is so
going
funny.
to do that.
Fine, I'll cut them shorter.
Gonna push the boundaries.
But which, looking back, like, okay, I could have worn.
Yeah.
Been respectful, whatever. And I would say too, I want to note, like, I don't know even where you guys necessarily stand, but I maybe wouldn't say like today standing here that I'm Mennonite. I even like right now I attend like a Reformed church, and I work at a Reformed church, but I don't know if I would say that I'm Reformed either. And I've had that conversation with my pastor too. Like I'm in the phase of life where I'm asking a lot of questions. Like
Totally.
I don't ever want to believe something because someone told me, and I was like, okay, I want to believe something because I find that truth for myself in Scripture.
Absolutely.
Or the Holy Spirit reveals it to me.
Absolutely.
So I'm still kind of on that journey of figuring it out. And not to say like that I don't value denominations at all, because I think there can be danger in leadership that doesn't have an authority of a denomination or of some sort of someone over them, like making sure that they're speaking truth. But for me, I have not figured out what that is yet.
Yeah. And I think like kind of what Kara said earlier, I would say a lot of my morals are rooted in the Mennonite faith. And we didn't really talk about this, and we don't probably need to dive into it too much because that opens a whole can of
this
worms.
isn't a religion podcast.
Pacifism is a huge part of when it comes to the Mennonite faith. And so I would say pacifism as a whole kind of turns the people of the Mennonite world into more quiet people. So to kind of give you context of what our churches were like and what our high schools were like, it was very low profile. Don't make too many waves. Stay neutral.
Right.
Just don't be too much.
Right.
And I would say all of us aren't like that at all, which is probably why we've kind of moved away from that, because I've been called loud and dramatic and too much my entire life. And I didn't really make sense in the Mennonite denomination because of that. And not to say there isn't good things. And I will also say I'm very thankful for the way that I was raised. I don't know if you guys would echo that
Yeah.
as well, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that I really value from the Mennonite church. So I do want to give a shout out to where I am from and where I'm raised, because I do really appreciate that.
I agree. And I think something good to note just about how we grew up, like I'm sure most people listening, like you can have faith but be on such a wide spectrum, kind of like what Meredith was talking about, the conservative Mennonites, maybe less visually worldly. You can have, someone who just looks like your average Joe neighbor but has like a really deep faith. And so I think that it's really cool to see how we grew up and how like specific of traditional faith we have. But then honestly, I think a lot of it, like at the conventions, I know, just circling back to that, I think that for me growing up was like the way to kind of connect with other people, to realize that I'm not so like siloed in my faith. Because I agree, I want to give shout out to how I grew up too, even if I don't fully believe 100% everything that maybe I was like taught growing up in the Mennonite faith. But when I went to these conventions, which we'll talk about in a sec, I felt like that was a way for me to connect with other believers from around the US, to just like shed light on, like, I think Mennonites really are eager to learn. And that's what I really like appreciate and value about how we grew up, because at these conventions we had teachings on different cultural and biblical things. We had worship
hymns.
Why can I think of the
just
word?
Like just worship services?
Yeah,
hymns,
I mean,
maybe services.
Case, didn't your dad drum?
My dad, yeah. So I mean, at the Mennonite conventions, I will say for Mennonite Church USA, it's kind of a big deal. Like it was, and there's other stuff that goes along with that, but it used to be a huge, huge deal. And so where Kira and I first met was a Mennonite convention in Ohio. And we were part of the youth Mennonite convention. So we were more junior high, which is a little bit smaller scale, but the big high school, like majority size, is thousands of people. And we would rent out a massive convention center from, I think we were in Columbus that year. And then I think I went to Phoenix. Yeah, I went to Phoenix, Arizona. And there's a lot of other ones in there. We did. Yeah,
I think
we
saw each
definitely
other
have a
there
picture
too.
together. But these are like really huge scale deals. And yeah, my dad would drum on the worship team, which was actually really, I felt like super cool. Like, yeah, that's my dad. Really cool. It's a pretty big deal.
Can I tell you a story of just exempling how naive and like growing up, my worldview was so tiny?
Sure.
So there was on choir tour, like what our schools did. I met someone who, she was a cousin of someone that like went to my school that I knew, but she lived in Goshen, and Goshen is a pretty liberal area in all senses of the word.
Yeah.
In Indiana, yes.
In Indiana, for those listening.
And so
don't know Goshen.
Anyways, but I was just thinking like, conservative Mennonite conference is coming up. I wonder if so and so is going to come. And so I Facebook messaged her. I was like, "Hey, are you coming to the conservative Mennonite conference?" And in my head, I didn't even realize that, like, I had no idea what that even meant. Like conservative Mennonite versus Mennonite Church.
Yeah.
It was just like, there's just like, in my head, I'm like, oh, it's just because, like, I don't know, the Mennonite church is so big, they just split it up into these different groups.
Yeah.
Not because of any, like, belief reasons.
Yeah.
And she responded so quick.
Right.
Or at least that's how I remember it. It probably wasn't that quick. But in my head, I remember getting this, like, very blunt message from her of, like, there's nothing conservative about me, period.
Oh,
and
my goodness. That's funny.
Also, in case you're wondering, she wasn't there. Yeah,
never.
So she didn't come.
No, yeah,
no, she didn't come.
She wasn't there.
Also, at that conference,
oh gosh,
this is the one that I wore shorts to, and my mom was like, "Don't." There was a homeless person on the drive to one of the churches where I was going to lead to help with the worship, and I remember. Keep in mind, my hometown, 1,800 people.
You probably have never seen a homeless person in your life.
No, not once. When I went to Columbus for like a youth group trip and we did sack lunches. But I saw him and I drove past and I was like, that's really odd. And I like turned around because I'm a good person. I want it known that I turned around.
Oh
my
glory.
gosh.
I turned around
Yeah,
because also
yeah.
I was like, I'm on my way
Tell
to
the
this
people.
church thing. Like, probably should do this, you know?
Yeah.
So I turned around, but there was already a car that
Right.
had stopped full of other like youths. And should have known at the time, of course, it was a
Youths.
plant. So like we went to this thing
Stop.
and it was one of the youth pastors. And he was like, so many of you just drove right by. And I was like, ick.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Again,
at all.
not speaking for the whole Mennonite church, but that specific scenario, I was like, that's gross.
Right.
Like every church has,
Everyone
not
has
every church,
gosh.
but a lot of
though.
churches have that ick,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or things like that.
We're
They're like,
we're doing
that
too
probably
much.
wasn't great.
This
Doing
is
too
true.
much.
That wasn't great. Do better.
Sometimes, especially for the youth, I don't know what it is for churches and youths. I'm like, sometimes we go too far, and I'm like, with like the analogies are crazy, the
Mhm.
scenarios. I'm like, right, let's just preach the gospel and just like call it a day because
definitely.
what are we doing? What are we doing?
Anyways,
yeah.
I feel like my biggest takeaway from conventions were like that was like the one time a year as well to like see other Mennonite people who are not
Yes.
from your hometown. So to our world, that was
Also,
a big
like,
deal.
boys and like new people and
Oh, boys. Case, do you remember those two boys
Yes,
we were
yeah,
pretty
totally.
much in love
shout
with?
out if you remember
You know, 7th grade
us.
us. We went to a water park one day. What? No. Do you
I
remember their
don't.
names?
dang it.
Oh, I wish I did too.
Oh, man,
Maybe it'll
I
come
wish
to
you
me.
did. I remember
Oh, yeah.
one guy had like curly
yeah.
blonde
Oh,
hair.
yeah.
Stunning, stunning. But every 2 years when we would go to this convention, we would see them.
Facebook
and,
message them, let them know, hey, you going to convention? I'll be there.
Are you still Facebook friends with them? Should we like call them up on Messenger?
Yeah, should we like invite them to the
I haven't
bar?
been on Facebook in years, y'all. So who knows?
Y'all.
Oh man, y'all.
Sorry.
Gross.
Came out, slipped out. I am from Iowa, though.
Oh gosh.
Do people say y'all in Iowa?
I don't
I live
know.
in Iowa. I don't hear a single person say y'all.
Oh, and you
I
also
was
live
gonna
in
say.
like the.
Yeah. North.
I was
part.
going to say whitest part of Iowa I've ever known in my life,
but
but
all Iowa is white.
Oh, okay.
Well-
Yeah, that's fair.
let me just correct you there.
Most
Iowa
of
City
Iowa
and Des
is
Moines are
white.
very multicultural, which is I'm from close to Iowa City.
Oh,
about 10 minutes from there.
okay.
I thought you were going to say Kelowna has some Mexicans that live there. 'Cause that's you.
One
Your
Mexican
dad.
family, and it was me.
The Perez.
One Mexican
Perez
family. The
family.
Perezes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there was no
Oh gosh.
diversity in my town,
Diversity.
but there was.
Yeah.
Wait,
Does
this
it?
actually leads to a good question that I just thought of. What do you think is like the biggest like shock when you came into any kind of world that was not Mennonite? Like what was your biggest like shock that you're like, "Oh, people don't do this or think this or have this?" What were like your ideas that were like just totally shattered when you were like,
People don't know how to sing 4-part harmony. I thought everyone
yeah.
knew how. I thought every church understood how
"Oh, that's
to
true."
sing in 4-part harmony.
My parents don't currently go to a Mennonite church anymore. They go to a different church. It's part of the Southern Baptist conference, but they don't like claim it really. Anyways, but my dad said that's what he misses. Like someone posted a video from our old church singing "Oh Beautiful Star" of Bethlehem,
Yeah.
and they were like, "Oh,
Oh,
that's nice." Like, kind of miss that.
I would encourage you, if you're listening to this and you're like, what the heck is all this Mennonite stuff about? And look up Mennonite singing. It is beautiful.
Yeah, it's
and
nice.
It is a tradition that runs very deep.
You could probably find us on YouTube.
in our choir. Yeah.
You can find our
Actually, look up Heston College Bel Canto 2015, 2016.
Why not 2014, 2015,
Because
Meredith?
I wasn't in that one.
Meredith made the wrong choice to
No,
not
I
be
I
in our
came too
choir.
late. They weren't auditioning
came
anymore.
too late. I'm doing air quotes for
Oh,
anyone
you
who can't
shut
see. She
up.
came too late and didn't
Shut
make the
up.
choir.
I hate you.
Didn't make the choir.
Sure. Okay.
Oh gosh. You know what I realized was that this might get a little deep, but like not everyone suppresses their feelings.
Like, Kiera, you've grown so much.
You have.
Like,
I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, you guys will get to know us a little bit, well, hopefully a lot of bit, during the duration of this podcast, but just like I feel like I definitely grew up very, very sheltered, very small-minded, and have grown so much. But I think the biggest thing that I look back on that I wish I would have changed about my younger self is that like I truly didn't ever like feel like I was allowed to feel emotion. That sounds so like weird, but it truthfully is. Like I think my church a lot, like we didn't talk about what seemingly was taboo topics, which now, like, would not be taboo. Any kind of emotion that was not contentment and joy and peace, just to me felt like shouldn't be there. And I felt like when I think it really took me coming to North Carolina and not like making like where I knew no one when I moved here, and I've been here for 5 years now. I think it took me taking myself on that journey and that adventure with the Lord to like realize that I have to like be okay with just like sitting and feeling to actually grow.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's my biggest thing. And every time I feel like I go back to my hometown, which has been only a handful of times since then, but I feel like everyone's still in the same mindset, and that could be a wrong, thing to put on them, but I just feel like I revert back to my old self of like suppress, just pretend everything's okay when it's not. And like now I just feel like so much joy and freedom with being with just being okay and raw with myself and before God.
Yeah.
So
I would definitely agree. I think for a lot of the Mennonite world, it's about just like that idea of just like being quiet and not being too loud and too emotional, which I'm all of those things. And I definitely struggled with that as well. And I will say I'm so thankful for the big mental health boom that we are currently going through, and taking time to evaluate how you feel. And I know like when we talked about those hard conversations we had to have as friends, we talk about these ideas of like revelations that we have with each other.
Yeah.
And we have talked about these for years. We'll be like, I just had a revelation today. And one of the things that we would challenge each other, and we would say, hey, I'm just curious. Why do you think you do this? And it's not coming from a place of like contentment or being rude. It's just like, I am genuinely curious as your friend.
Right.
Why do you do the things you do? And I think that was one of the things we would bring up to you, Kira, is just like, why do you think you don't want to talk about it? Or why do you think you just like keep ignoring my question? And you're like, I just don't know how to talk about it. And then you would just like ignore it.
The answer was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's go to B-dubs.
Yeah.
And that's so true. I think I would like, kind of like deflect with humor and whatnot, because I felt uncomfortable to recognize, okay, maybe it's because, whether I didn't feel like my parents were, very open with me, or with my church wasn't very open with me. Like maybe I didn't want to like go down the rabbit hole, because
once you start feeling, they all start coming out. And then
they all start coming. Oh my gosh. Well, actually, Casey, I remember this revelation. I think you both were there in our room at Northwestern, which was a school we transferred to after Heston. We'll have to dive into that later, but I think you were saying something along the lines of like, why do you think it's sometimes easier for you to make a lot of friends but not like hone in with your close friends? Something along those lines, because I like for most of my life have had a lot of friends, and I would just say I'm a fairly friendly person. I can make a connection with anyone. Meredith last episode was like, I could talk to a wall, and I really could, and I would be okay with that. But I think this is true, but I think what I realized when you were asking that was there was like, it's so funny how everything like stems from your childhood. And I was actually just talking to a coworker about this. There was a best friend I had in elementary school who told me I was too much and too overbearing, and that I should not tell her everything that I feel. And, back in whatever it was, elementary, middle school, like, pretty much your closeness was as close as like, I like this boy. What do you think? So it wasn't even like we were going through any like crazy life changes, but still up until that point, I felt like this person was my best friend. And when she was like, "You're too much," I was like, oh gosh, well, I don't want to be ever like too much for someone or too overbearing. Like if I'm like giving my heart to somebody and they're like, I can't handle that, like that would be the worst thing. So I think after that, truthfully, I didn't piece it together until college. Was like, maybe that's why sometimes it's hard for me to like hone in and go deeper with the friends that I know are for life, because I just think, oh, well, they're just there. I just know that they're going to be friends for life without taking the time to like be intentional with those people, is because I'm like, well, what if I do get too close and then they say like, no, like you're too much. This is too much for me. I like have that fear, and I think I still do, but it took that revelation to put words to it and language into it. And I think that like totally changed the game
at the
for
church
me.
that I work at now, and that I attend, we talk a lot about emotional wholeness. And they have a curriculum or like a teaching that they go through called faith walking, which I cannot recommend this enough. It has been transformational in my life, in Noah's life, like basically. But Kiara, it talks about that exact same thing that you mentioned. Like they use the language of like, we have this first formation when we're young, like an event like that, like your friend telling you this, and then from that you learn a lesson and you learn a defense mechanism that carries you through your life. Like, oh, so that taught me that if I'm too much, people won't like me. So to stay safe now in my life, I'm going to build this wall and keep everything in. And you carry that to your adulthood. And then we think of like, so then they talk about like, what's the impact of that? Like the impact of that is not being able to get close to people or et cetera, you know? So we all have this, we all have like something in our youth that formed us. And like, it doesn't matter. You could come from the best family ever, but everyone has like hurts and wounds like that.
Yeah. Like that boy telling me I jiggled when I pogo sticked.
Yes, exactly. And that taught you,
no
one's going to like me if I jiggle.
Better be skinny.
Or whatever. Yeah. Yes. So then how do I show up in the world to be safe, you know?
Totally.
So, yeah. And the basis of it is like, God calls us to be a transformed people. And part of that is emotional wholeness, like to be transformed emotionally. And that emotional wholeness is part of our spiritual formation, because he wants us fully healed and whole. And that includes emotionally.
Yeah.
You know? But it's hard. It's hard work because, like you said, once you start digging, all those other things came up. Like once I started digging into things, there were things I was like, I haven't thought about that in years. And then you like have to grieve that, or you have to do the hard work of like dealing with that. And it's all hard. It just brings other stuff up, but it's so good.
I think we all went to Huston, and I would say we thoroughly enjoyed our 2 years. And so something to know about Huston College is that it is only a 2-year school. So after 2 years, people transfer away. And typically a lot of people transfer to another Mennonite university like EMU, like we mentioned before. We've mentioned Goshen, Indiana. There is a Goshen Mennonite college there. Or maybe it's university. I don't know. Not sure. But
I think it's just Goshen College.
Goshen College.
Don't even know.
But there's a lot of other Mennonite colleges across the country. And I think when we left Huston and we transferred to Northwestern, there was definitely a grieving process. I think even knowing each other in a different environment was different. And I think we kind of struggled. Yeah, we kind of struggled even with our own friendship of like, well, we came here together, so we should probably still stay friends. But it was like, what was the, like, why do we even still want to be friends? And
this is true.
Did we make the biggest mistake of our lives transferring all together? And what did we do? I know those thoughts were kind of running through my head. And so I definitely, parts of me were grieving leaving Huston, even though I would say the three of us were like, can we please get out of the middle of nowhere, Kansas? Because it was boring. I mean, there was times where it was boring, and the relationships
you just made your own fun. Yeah,
the relationships is what made it fun. And then when we moved away and we didn't know any of those people anymore, we had to kind of start over. And I think when you're like 20,
Yeah,
you don't
this
really
is
want to
true.
start over with your friends. By the time you're 20, people kind of have their like self-established. And so we kind of had to, again, like we talked about last podcast, put ourselves out there. And I think emotionally we struggled. I would say all three of us at some point really, really struggled with kind of finding ourselves in this new environment. Plus a little bit of probably being out of the Mennonite world. Like we didn't have, I'm going to air quote again, Mennonite fame. Like people didn't know what Mennonite was. People didn't know that like we came from these different places, and frankly, no one cared. So we kind of had to just figure out who we were without all of that Mennonite-ism following us and it kind of explaining who we were a bit. We had to like redefine ourselves.
Yeah. I will say,
I struggled a lot that first year. Sorry, I'll just interject and say I think transferring
it's
schools
the hardest thing ever. If you've ever done
difficult,
it, like, wow, it's tough.
For anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like props to you. You are a strong person because we've all done that and experienced it. I think it's something so humbling being a junior at a school that everybody knows everybody, but you literally don't know a single soul. Lucky for us, you know, we did go with us three and then Bryce, Casey's husband, also came with us. So we were so lucky to transfer schools and have somewhat of a foundation. Absolutely. I think still, like, I struggle a lot because I felt so out of place. I really loved my first year of college, especially Heston. Something about it is just so special. So transferring, I was like, I want it to be the same as that, and it just was not under the sun at all. And so I really had a hard time. And I think back to that first semester, and I was like, same thing as you. Like, did I make the wrong decision? Like, I felt like Casey had her volleyball people, Meredith had her soccer people, and I was like, I don't really know who I have. Like, that's just what I thought. Sure, I was in choir at that point, but I just didn't really feel like I had people. I had you guys, but I feel like our schedules were just so off that, especially first semester, trying to figure everything out, that I'm like, I don't really remember, like, especially the first couple weeks, I'm like, what, you know, when we saw each other. And Casey and I had lived in the same room and Meredith was right next to us. So we all were literally proximity, so close. Yet I think our relationship definitely took like on new challenges with being in this
We just had to fight a little bit harder for it.
Yeah. And I will say, correct me if I'm wrong, I would say of the three, I maybe had an easier time with the transition. Like I loved my experience at Northwestern. I loved Heston, and like freshman year of my 4 years, superior, awesome year. But I will say that I found such value in my time at Northwestern also, because also that's when I came into, like, I'm a worship leader, and that's when I stepped into that, and that's when I felt like my relationship with the Lord would not be where it is today if it was not for my time at Northwestern, specifically in the worship realm with like Josh Kuipers, the director of worship. Like, so I think I found a lot of value in that, and transferring in, like, Casey and I both played sports. And I found a great group of friends on the soccer team that like really helped the transition be easier. And I felt like I had a place. And so I don't know, would you guys agree? Like, I feel like we've talked about that before.
I would totally agree. I know for me, I was, well, I alluded to this. I'm half Mexican. I'm Hispanic, and this area was kind of, like I said earlier, extremely white. And so again, not having that Mennonite fame, no one knew who I was. And I was just this random girl of color in the middle of a cornfield, basically. And no one knew who I was. And so I had people say things to me that probably weren't like the kindest, and just didn't really understand, like, why are you here? Like, this just doesn't make sense. And it wasn't from a place of being, I think, inherently rude. I think it was just a little bit of people being naive and just not understanding the world beyond just where they were from and proximity.
Yeah.
So for me, that was really tough. I just didn't connect with people as easily. And it was like people looked at me and they just kind of tilted their head and they were like, why are you here? And like, what? Like, what? Why here?
Yeah.
And big reason for transferring to Northwestern is I had a cousin that went there. And he was like, hey, you should really consider it, because I went through the worship arts program there. And I would say in terms of Northwestern, I loved my professors. I feel like scholastically, I had a great education at Northwestern. It was just really the culture of the community. I just didn't mesh. And I don't know if I maybe, looking back on it, maybe I didn't open up my heart to it enough, or, you know, people looked at me a little funny and I wasn't able to get over it. I don't know. And I wasn't also willing to have those tough conversations with people. I look back on it now and I'm like, why didn't I educate? Why didn't I just explain a little bit more? Why do I have to just allow people to say these things and feel bad for making them feel bad?
Because I'll say I got that too, of like, well, why are you here? Because I'm not from there. But mine wasn't off the bat because of how I looked.
Right.
Mine was once I said where I was from, like Pennsylvania. They're like, how'd you get here?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
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 Same.
Yeah.
Virginia.
Right. And it really didn't make
as
sense.
like inherent as, Yep.
And I think even being from Iowa, it was still 5 hours, 5.5 hours from where I was from. So even I was still getting the question, like, why did you come here? Even though it's in the same state, it was just on the opposite side of the state.
Yeah.
So, I think Meredith, you adapted really well. And there were certain people at Northwestern that I treasured and I had really fond memories of. But in terms of the community as a whole, it just wasn't for me. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be for everyone. I think we all go to schools and I think we think this is going to be perfect. And I get to move out and I get to get out of my hometown and I'm just going to explore this new world. And sometimes it just doesn't always end up like that.
Yeah. I think dynamically of the college, like Heston, there were people from all over the country because there are Mennonite pockets everywhere. So there were people from like Florida. There were people from Oregon, from Ohio, from Virginia, etc. Like all over. And
from different countries as well.
Yeah. Yes. And it was normal. Like, oh yeah, you're from Pennsylvania. Like, or you're from
or
it was like more
you're from
Indonesia,
you're
versus
from
like
Africa. Like that wasn't weird.
Versus now I live in Orange City, which is where Northwestern is. So like I stayed around here after graduation. And now after living here, I'm like, oh yeah, Northwestern is basically people who live here. Like it was odd for someone from Pennsylvania to be here. You know, like at the time I might have been one of maybe two people who were from Pennsylvania, or you know, like there wasn't an outreach like there was maybe at Heston, because too, Northwestern is a part of the RCA. Actually, I don't think they are anymore, but that's the Reformed Church of America at the time. That's what they were a part of.
Yeah, I know. I was like RCA.
I work in an RCA church, so
RCA.
But so anyways, and that's a pretty I would say I'm guessing it's a smaller denomination than like Mennonite. Like I don't know if it has quite as many pockets as all over, as like they don't have conferences. I don't think, like the Mennonite church does.
Yeah.
So I think the culture in that sense was different, and so it was hard to just like get acclimated and be a part of it because we were not a part of it. That we are not part of that like culture here at all.
And I think that even goes beyond denominations or, you know, take religion, Christianity, take it out of it. You plop yourself in a new place and it's like, oh my goodness, I don't know the way that people walk. I don't know the way that people talk.
You have to figure it out.
And I mean, I think even for all three of us, there would be times when we would express ourselves in ways where I'm like, that's weird. It's like, well, everyone from my hometown does it this way. And, you know, and Meredith says cool instead of cool, and all of these like different like things. We would just go to school. We just you know, we say things differently, we do things differently, and it can be really hard to just adjust. And
and your freshman year, you're more resilient. Versus your junior year, you're like, no, I know, I like basically know who I am or like who I want to be. You know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. I feel like at a small school like Heston, which was 2 year, and I mean, all these factors played into it. People from all over were there. I feel like you were given kind of a front seat row to be able to do so many different things. You know, you could technically be like, you know, starter as a, you know, freshman. Sure, it was two grades, but like things that maybe a 4-year school you didn't have access to. A college like Heston, you were able to kind of have your hand in everything. And I feel like that, looking back, I feel like that's why I thrive. I am in a Enneagram 7, if anyone knows what that is. But a typical Enneagram 7 personality type loves to put their hand in so many things. And I think I thrived at a place like Heston because of that. I don't think I knew it at the time, but I was in choir. I was in hitting balls in the
That was tennis.
That was tennis.
I was playing tennis.
She literally didn't play tennis, and she just decided to pick it up one day. So that's the big joke. She didn't know what she was doing.
Yes.
She hit balls in the fall.
The big joke. I literally never played tennis until college. Hit balls in fall. I feel like I was able to do like leadership things. Like I was on this student board. We called it CAB. I was an RA my sophomore year. And I feel like when I transferred to Northwestern, I mentally had to get through so many hurdles because I didn't feel like I could like be as involved in this campus because so many other people were well established, just had their path going for them. And I think that's why I didn't love it as much as maybe I could have, is because I was like, well, I don't know what there is to do for me, because I want to go be, I want to get involved, but it was like I didn't know where to do that. And so I don't really think I thrived there because of that. And I think a lot of it has to do with like my own fault. Like I think I could have put myself out there more. But yeah, I would say out of the three of us, Meredith really
well,
did,
I mean, she also met her husband there,
so
more, makes
but
a little bit of sense.
Except
this
after.
is true.
That's true. But you did know who he was, kind of.
Yeah. I was a senior and he was a freshman.
Were you?
So we actually, along the lines of,
okay.
I know, but he took time off before college.
Sure.
You're so old.
We're only a year apart. I don't know why that's something that's something I need to dig into in faith walking. That's something that bothers me. Let's get curious about
go back
that.
to that.
Anyways, we'll come back to that sometime.
Yeah.
But no, along the lines of being forgettable, like I was talking about yesterday, me meeting Kiera and her not remembering me. Noah and I met and he doesn't remember it.
I'm dead.
It was at it was a soccer singles mixer, which also such a Northwestern thing to do.
Funny.
Like
classic.
And so we met at that. It was like a
gosh.
speed dating thing, but he doesn't remember meeting me, so he sucks.
Guess you weren't very memorable.
And he's sleeping on the couch tonight.
That's so upsetting.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Well,
on
maybe
the
we should
couch.
transition into how the heck we live in the places that we live today. Meredith, you kind of explained it a little bit. You stayed after college. But Kiara, why are you in North Carolina? What are you doing over there?
Yes. Okay, North Carolina. So we had graduated college in 2018 and I literally had no idea what to do with my life. And I went online, literally Googled internships, East Coast, church stuff. And I don't even remember what I was Googling exactly. And I had no plans, graduated, zero plans, decided to go into Google and found this internship at a church that I only knew of this church because of the worship team, which thinking about it now is just hilarious because the church I work at now is massive. It is a mega church. But anyway, did some Googling, found an internship with a team which was like titled digital design. And I decided, I'm going to just apply and pray about it. Didn't hear back for so long. And I got really antsy and was like, I feel like actually God is telling me to do this. While actually, fun fact, at the same time, my other college friend lived in California at the time and was like, well, if you don't know what to do, just come live with me and my mom and, we'll figure something out. And I was like, okay, great. So I have options. But I really felt like that was the comfortable option. And I felt like God was like, do something like out of your comfort zone and just like watch how I move. And it's just funny because like it took me taking that like leap of faith to come and be in North Carolina. So So yeah, I just moved to North Carolina to do this internship at a church called Elevation back in 2018, and then kind of just stuck around hoping for a job, and a couple years later ended up getting a staff position. But that's a brief introduction of like how I got here, and I'm sure later on you will just learn all of the ways of, you know, our different places that we live. But yeah, honestly, I'm here because of a Google search, and B, God telling me that I can't be comfortable. And I think about that a lot just in my life here that I've created. Is it took me just like stepping out. And I mean, I knew 0 people when I moved here to Charlotte, and I feel like I just have a good community around me, and I'm really, really, really thankful.
Love it. Yeah, I live in Oregon. I live in a small town that's just smallish, bigger than what I grew up in.
Yeah, what's the population of that guy?
It's in the 30s.
No one's allowed to say small
town. I know. It's like 30,000. It's
how
30,000,
small?
so it's
This is true.
big. But I live outside of Salem, about 20-30 minutes outside of Salem, which is the capital of Oregon. So there's a lot of people around here, and I think after I left Northwestern, I needed drastic change. And while Oregon seems quite dramatic, I have a sister that lived out here. She got married to someone actually from Heston, and he was from Oregon. And so I had lived out here with her a summer in between my junior and senior year, and I loved it. And I also grew up visiting out here because my mom is originally from Oregon. So we would come and visit Oregon every other summer. And so the area was very familiar to me. It's gorgeous. If you've never been to Oregon, I'm always advocating for people to come visit / come live here, because I love where I live.
She tells us
I've literally never been there once.
It's Meredith. Yeah.
I know Meredith would be there,
but I love Oregon. I love where I live, and it has been challenging for me, even though you have family around you, and I do have cousins and grandparents and aunts and uncles. It is still hard, again, to kind of transplant yourself. So for me, I'm a pretty social person. So I had a fun time getting to know people. But for my husband, he's actually from Nebraska. So it was a bigger transition for him, but it's been really good for us, again, to be uncomfortable and stretch ourselves. And I'm so thankful that I moved away from the Midwest. It was just good. It was good for me, and it was good for my marriage, and it was good for my husband and I individually. And I'm really grateful for my Midwest roots. I will say that there's a lot of things about the Midwest that I appreciate. There's a lot of things that I could live without, snow being one of them. So I'm really thankful of where I live now, and it's green all year round, and it's gorgeous. And again, come visit Oregon, because you won't regret it.
I think about you often in the winter. I remember specifically like in the Walmart parking lot in Sioux Center, like you being like, it just should not be allowed to be this cold. Like, why is it so frigid? Like
you were not.
You were just not like, you were not kind about the cold.
No. I hate being cold. I hate being cold. It's one of the worst things in my life.
Do you hate being wet? Because like it's so rainy there, is it not?
That's such a weird question. I mean, who loves being wet?
Sorry. I mean,
weird question.
So now as a true Oregonian, you can't ever use an umbrella. So
why does that word make me want to vomit?
Ew,
it sounds like a disease.
As a true Oregonian.
Whatever. I lived here for 5 years, so whatever. Move on.
Gross.
Okay, that's not right. Oregonian is actually a thing. You can look it up. That's what people call themselves.
I'm an Iowan.
Good job, Mayor.
Thanks.
During the winter, it's actually just the rainy season. So you basically have like 3 main summers, or like.
Does it not snow there?
It doesn't really snow, which is why
but it's
I'm
like north.
here.
It's like north. Isn't it cold?
It's cold, but like the coldest it gets on average is about 30,
right?
35.
Oh. Yeah.
And then it will rain, and it will rain instead of, it'll just rain instead of snow, which is why I'm here. I don't like
my nostrils freeze. My nose hairs freeze.
Could not think of a worse thing.
I love it.
Wow.
And it's cherry blossom season right now. I'm looking at a cherry blossom
I can't advocate
outside
for
of my
Oregon.
window right now. It's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
So
It snowed this weekend here.
that's terrible.
I can't.
Anyways.
It is 75 degrees here and sunny.
Okay,
Okay, Mare.
well, mine's pretty basic. I went to school for elementary ed.
Are you still a
And
teacher?
when you go, I am a teacher right now. This is my last year teaching, and then I'm going to work full time as a worship director at my church. So I work there part time now. I've been working there part time
Heck
for the last 2 years. So now I'm
yes.
stepping into a full time role, which I'm very excited about. Yeah. So, but when you graduate like with an education degree, you get your education license, and it's honestly just for the sake of ease. I just decided to get one in the state that I graduated in because like your college helps you and gives you like the how-tos versus each state has different requirements. So if I would have gotten my Pennsylvania license, I would have had to take like different tests, and I just simply couldn't be bothered to do that. Like honestly, that was really it. And so I was like, well, I'll just teach in Iowa for a while. Like I'm not dating anyone. I don't have any ties anywhere. Like so I applied to like 40 schools in Iowa. I literally went on Teach Iowa website and just applied to every single preschool job that was on there and got like maybe 3 interviews. Because of course they don't.
Yeah.
If schools don't know you, they don't care. Like they have student teachers that are applying for their jobs. Why would they hire Joe Schmo? So anyways, but I got a job up in Okoboji, which is like an hour and a half from Orange City, from Northwestern. So I did that my first year, and then that's when I started dating Noah because I had my friend Sarah still went to Northwestern, so I'd go back and visit her a ton on the weekends. And then one night we were out, and Noah was there, and we started talking, and he asked me I hate this though, and he knows it. He asked me for my Snapchat when we were at the bar instead of my number. And the whole night I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's so cute. Like, wow, I really like him. And then he asked for me for my Snapchat, and I was like,
ick.
Shoot. Like, ick. Like, oh, he's like 12.
You were like, this is a no.
He's asking me for my Snapchat. And so, but I did, and we snapped for like 2 weeks. And then finally I was like, I hate this. I was like, here's my phone number. Like, call me.
Yeah.
And he was
Actually,
like, oh, sorry. He's
deleting
like,
Snapchat.
I thought you wanted that. Like, he was like, I don't know. I was trying to be cool. Like, people use Snapchat. And I was like, no, I hate that. So anyways,
now he knows.
And then we started dating, and I got a job in Sioux Center at a school. And so I moved back here, and now Noah and I are married, and
It all
rest
worked
is
out.
history. Yep.
Yeah.
So here we are.
So funny. Yeah.
That's
wild.
So crazy.
But yeah, we're now post removed
Look
from
at
school
us.
from college for 5 years, which is
Ew.
makes me feel
5
so
years.
old.
Next year, we
Kiera,
went to
are
high
you
school
27?
a
Why would
decade
you say
ago.
that? Wow.
I'm
Because I just thought
27.
I'm going to be
I know,
27.
And
I'm a little
yeah.
older than you.
Then I'm going to be
I'm
27.
going to be 27 next month.
I know. I'm going to be
Whoa.
28 this year.
Yeah.
This is true. Honestly, 27 is a good
Yeah.
year. It's been a good
Okay,
year for
great.
me.
Yes.
It's going to be a great
She
year
always
for
tells
you.
us how the
Year
year's going to
buying
go because she's so much
Yeah.
older than us.
We are in our.
Yeah. She gives us
Yeah.
her wisdom.
Yeah.
I'm just like. I'm
Old
just
and wise.
so old and wise. Honestly, that is a thing that I liked when I was younger. Was like I was older than my friends, so I got my license first. But
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, I kind of hate this.
Guys, 10 years
It was
ago,
fun
we
when
were
I was
seniors
16.
in high school.
Less fun.
Oh,
27.
wow.
No.
Wait,
I'm so
are you
wrong.
super
Nope,
wrong?
I'm so
Yeah.
wrong. Yep.
We were.
No, 2014.
No, you're
No.
right. 2013. Well, 2013 we
So you're
began our
kind of
senior
right.
year.
From right
So
now,
you're right on
I'm
that.
thinking right now.
Again,
because
guys,
I'm
math
thinking
is
if I
not
am
our forte
27.
in this friend group.
We talked about this
we
yesterday.
Don't do it.
Because
No,
I'm thinking
again,
if I
every
was
episode,
27,
we are
because I
not good
graduated
at
when I
math.
was 17, but I'm 26. So 10 years ago, I was 16.
Oh,
Yeah. And I was,
Anyways.
I
see,
think I
yes.
graduated like
11
Okay,
years.
this
Right
is not a
after my
math
birthday,
podcast, and it's not a religion podcast. So both
have been
both
brought
been
up very
really strong
prominently.
today.
really strong this episode.
We just felt like talking about the Mennonite faith was important for our
gosh.
backstory.
Totally.
So that people who are listening can understand,
Yeah.
like, even when we mention it, now you have
right.
like, a
and if
frame
we
of
reference
for
it,
what we're
then there
talking
you go.
about.
Just go back to episode
Right.
2 to get some context.
Yes.
a little bit
Yeah.
of background.
So our
on
other
us.
episodes will not be as like historical or like religion heavy.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
Right.
we thought it was
it's
important.
definitely
Right.
still, I mean,
We
it's
need
still a
to-
part of
we
all
need
of
to
our
get to
lives,
know you
so
guys.
I'm not going
Yes.
to shy away from it. But
Oh, yeah.
it definitely isn't the main reason of this, but it's going to get brought up.
Yeah.
So if you don't like that,
Sorry.
maybe it's not the time to try something else. But I promise we're fun.
Just
like
buckle
we're
up.
super fun.
We're all drinking
We're
wine
so
right now.
fun.
So I mean,
Don't you worry.
I'm out.
We're
I've
all
been out for a little
drinking
bit,
wine.
Yeah, same. I kind of
Just
chugged
vibing.
Anyways,
oh
my gosh.
Wow, is that a wrap?
I think
Episode
that's a wrap,
2?
episode
we might have to
2.
wrap it up. We might have to
Yeah.
wrap it up on that one. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening. Episode 2 of the It's Been Forever
back for more.
podcast.
I'm Casey.
And I'm Meredith. Sorry. Okay.
Okay.
try that
Well,
again.
we said this was gonna be okay. We're gonna try again. We're like, is this ever gonna get better? Episode 2, obviously, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
Nope,
I'm
it's
dead.
fine.
I'm Casey.
And I'm Meredith.
And I'm Kiera.
And we'll see you next time.
Then we'll see you next
Thanks
time.
for listening to
Okay.
our podcast. See you next week.
Bye.